8,
You're watching The
7,
Experience, Comic Culture and Sales.
5,
Streaming live daily to
4,
Facebook, YouTube,
3,
Twitch, and Twitter.
2, 1.
So a few weeks ago, I had an idea. I was thinking about the upcoming the Marvels movie and how with the SAG-AFTRA strike, the actors weren't able to go out and promote the movie. And, you know, it does hurt films when that happens. But what I was thinking that Marvel should do was to go ahead and do the press tour where they have all the different media come in. They sit down in their director chairs. There's a big poster for the movie in there. And then the actors sit in the director's chairs across from them and they ask them questions. And you see every studio or every website and every news outlet sends somebody and they interview them. And I thought what Marvel should have done, since they didn't have the access to the actors, is they should have done that and just put cats on the director's chairs saying that they were the Flurkins from the movie. And then we'd see just all this footage of reporters trying to ask questions to cats. And cats being cute or just jumping down or, you know. It was silly, but I thought it would be fun. Well, Marvel's done something like that. It's actually happening right now. Marvel is broadcasting a live stream of what they call Fun with Flurkins from the Cat Cafe. And it's just a live stream of a bunch of cats in a room. They've had a couple unboxing, and every time they unbox something, it's cat toys. But yeah, and this has been going on for hours. I think we're over 3 hours already. So Marvel is doing something in the same spirit of what I was thinking. But when I tuned in, it had been going for about an hour. And I stayed there for a little bit because I was curious what the unboxing was. And at one point I thought, wonder how many people are viewing this. So I glanced down and I saw that we were at the 64-minute mark. And at the 64-minute mark, there was exactly 616 viewers, 616 viewers. And of course, the MCU Earth designation and the Marvel designation is 616. Coincidence? I think not. Stay tuned for the Dan Wickline Show. Hey everybody, welcome to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. It is November 2nd of 2023 and we are flying through this year. Hello to Ed, hello to Triple B, and of course we got JD on the board. And we've got a ton of news to cover. And then we're going to talk some more about that, sort of about that Variety article yesterday where they talked about Marvel and how, is Marvel in trouble? And I'm going to address that specifically because I've got some things that I think there's a false narrative going on, or at least unfair comparison. But we will get into all of that. I'm bringing receipts this time. But let's jump into the news. HBO and Max Content CEO Casey Blouse was talkative today. I have a couple different stories from him filtered into the news. But he doesn't buy the notion that audiences have tired of major comic book tentpoles, despite recent signs of drop-off in the movie box office and some streaming outlets. And again, we're going to talk about that later. But he says, I don't know that it's necessarily tentpole fatigue as much as it is a sameness of storytelling. Now, he was talking during a showcase in New York for the 2024 programming. One of the shows to get a significant billing at the event was the upcoming The Penguin, which stars Colin Farrell in the title role and is a spin-off of Matt Reeves' The Batman franchise. And Matt Reeves, of course, is an executive producer on it. And this is going to be a Max original. And it was supposed to come out in spring of 2024, but with the WGA strike and the SAG-AFTRA strike, it is being delayed. Now, DC, of course, is the main supplier of the superhero fare on the Max, but Blouse largely demurred during the press Q&A to talking about the state of the comic book corporate sibling production. He didn't really want to talk that much about James Gunn's take on Superman, stuff like that. But he says, I think the key, even into his programming philosophy when it comes to keeping genre fare interesting, I think the key within the DC is trying to tell different stories in different styles, to not try to do the same show over and over again. I would say Peacemaker is a very different show tonally than The Penguin, so there's not a uniformity to the storytelling. I think that helps. He also volunteered that a thought about a major rival. Unfortunately, Marvel, as good as their shows are, there's probably been a lot of them. There's one of the advantages we have at Warner Brothers is it's not just one set of stories. There's a lot of stories you can go to. And I don't know if I agree with that at all. I think Marvel has mixed it up pretty well, too, when you think this one's a heist movie, that one's kind of a sci-fi, that's an old war film. But, I don't think the guy from Warner Brothers is going to speak highly of the guys over at Marvel. It just isn't going to happen. All right, moving on to our next story. If you're a fan of Futurama, you'll be happy to know that Hulu has ordered 2 more seasons of the adult animated series. The streamer revived the series in 2022 with a 20-episode order. Season 11 premiered on July 24th and was Nielsen's top 10 original series list for 6 weeks. Season 12 is expected to debut in 2024. And then a 20-episode latest order is for seasons 13 and 14. Now, Futurama is kind of the key pillar to what Hulu calls Animayhem brand, which the streamer launched in July, and that includes also shows like Family Guy, Bob's Burger, and American Dad. But now Hulu's the only place you can find Futurama. So, all right, going back over to the folks at HBO Max and Casey Blouse. This time he said that The Last of Us will be heading into production for the 2nd season early next year with an eye for a 2025 launch. Again, this was revealed in New York. The series was renewed in January after scoring the 2nd largest premiere after House of the Dragon since Boardwalk Empire's launch in 2010. It comes from the Chernobyl creator Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann and is based on Naughty Dog's video game. The Last of Us takes place 20 years after modern civilization has been destroyed. Joel, played by Pedro Pascal, a hardened survivor, is hired to smuggle Ellie, played by Bella Ramsey, a 14-year-old girl, out of an oppressive quarantine zone. What starts as a small job soon becomes a brutal and heartbreaking journey as they both must traverse the U.S. and depend on each other for survival. The Last of Us co-creator, executive producer Craig Mazin told Deadline earlier this summer that the pre-strike, they were able to get some work done and that the first episode had already been written. He said, we got pretty far, actually. We were doing great. Neil and I had been sitting and talking with Haley Gross, who was also working on the 2nd game as a writer, and Bo Shim, the new writer that was in our little tiny room with us. Obviously not a mini room because we're greenlit the proper with a real show, and because I hate that mini room stuff. Yes, Pedro Pascal is Mando, and he's doing this Last of Us. It's an HBO Max show. It's based on a video game. It's kind of a survivalist zombie thing, but the zombies aren't normal zombies. They're infected with these weird things. But if you're into stuff like The Walking Dead, you're going to like The Last of Us. And it's had some pretty interesting guest stars. There's an episode with Nick Offerman that is absolutely phenomenal. So, more from Casey Blouse. House of the Dragon is officially returning to HBO next summer. The second season of the Game of Thrones spinoff will air in early summer 2024. As long-eyed by Warner Brothers Discovery-owned network, the news was confirmed by Blouse at the HBO event, where members of the press first saw the trailer for the second season. The show, which is finished filming, is currently in post-production, so it doesn't have to worry about the actors' strike, was largely able to continue filming during the summer as it has largely a British cast who is under equity contracts rather than SAG-AFTRA. I didn't know that. I thought equity was kind of in support of SAG-AFTRA, but I guess if you hire a bunch of British people, you can keep working. Let's see. He also said that the Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the Hedge Knight, another Game of Thrones prequel, will start shooting this spring. The series was handed a green light in April and is based on the George R.R. Martin Dunk and Egg fantasy novels. Dunk and Egg sounds like something you order at a British pub for breakfast. You know, oh, I'll have a dunk and an egg. So the Game of Thrones prequel series is written and executive produced by Martin and Ira Parker, House of the Dragon co-creator, executive producer, and showrunner Ryan Condal and Vince Gerardis will executive produce. JD says, you'll find a lot of weird stuff with Pedro out there. Dude loves to work and does way more than AAA films. I want him to play Ramirez in the upcoming Highlander remake. I think having him play opposite of Henry Cavill would be great. But okay, anybody a fan of Prison Break? It's dunk and egg with bangers and mash and a room temp pint me less. Yeah, there you go. So Prison Break is getting another series. It's going to be set in the same world, but it's not going to really be the same stars. It's coming from Mayan MC co-creator and showrunner Elgin James. It's in early stages of development. The new installment via 20th Century Television is, like I said, not expected to feature any of the original characters. Of course, the show starred Michael Schofield, who was played by Wentworth Miller, and Lincoln Burrows, played by Dominic Purcell. Prison Break ran for 5 seasons on Fox, spawned a TV movie called The Final Break, a low-budget spin-off called Prison Break Proof of Innocent, which was exclusively available on mobile phones. And the series also inspired a video game, online webisode, a magazine, and a novel. So, yeah, that was pretty popular. Triple B watched it back in the day. I loved that when they got Wentworth Miller to play Captain Cold on The Flash, they then got Dominic Purcell to play Heatwave. I thought that was absolute brilliant casting. And the episode where they had to do a prison break, they were so, you could see they were just enjoying the hell out of that episode. Paramount's pretty happy right now, Paramount and CBS, because it seems that all of the advertising that were set up for the Super Bowl, since they're going to have the 2024 Super Bowl, has already been bought. And the Super Bowl ad spots are really freaking expensive. So they say, a spokesman for Paramount says that game inventory for Super Bowl 58, I have to translate the Roman numeral there, on CBS is virtually sold out, pacing ahead of schedule. The big game is set to be held in Las Vegas on February 11th, 2024. That the Super Bowl is effectively sold out, at least for the in-game ads, is a big win for Paramount at a time when traditional media companies are still seeing overall advertising declines. So people still think that the Super Bowl is the best place to debut your trailers and stuff like that. By the way, there were 2 new trailers today. We're going to talk about those in just a minute. I got one other news story, and then I'll mention those 2 new trailers. Canadian comedy Letterkenny is ending. The series will wrap up its upcoming 12th season on Hulu, which will drop all 6 episodes on December 26th. It was announced on Thursday. The series will also stream on Canadian platform Crave. Will premiere all episodes on December 25th, and then it's done. No more Letterkenny. And if you're not familiar with Letterkenny, it's a half-hour comedy that revolves around the residents of a small rural Canadian community of Letterkenny who belong to one of 3 groups. They're either the Hicks, the Skids, or the hockey players. The 3 groups are constantly feuding over seemingly trivial matters that often end with someone getting their ass kicked. Now, in season 12, the small town contends with a comedy night at Modine's, a country music hit, the Deegans Had Bad Influence, a new nightclub, and an encore at the Egg Hall, and that's just for starters, according to this. So you got final season of Letterkenny coming up. All right, so if you were on YouTube or anything else this morning and you noticed 2 new trailers dropped. Now, the first one was for the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And I remember watching the Planet of the Apes when I was a kid in the 70s. I remember them, in the late 70s and stuff, they'd show them on Saturdays in the middle of the afternoon. And that's when I'd watch them. And Charlton Heston going, your hands off me, you damn dirty ape. Stuff like that. But I've never really gotten into the more modern ones. I know that Matt Reeves directed a couple of them, and that's where he came from before the Batman. The trailer looks interesting, but I don't think it's my gig. It didn't excite me because, the basic story's been the same. It's a society where mankind has devolved back to primitive caveman type, and the apes have taken over. And how many times can you see that scenario? That said, there was a trailer today that completely caught me by surprise that I enjoyed quite thoroughly. And then I had to go and look it up to see if it was what I think it was. No, I didn't watch the Marky Mark one. Was that Tim Burton, I think? But yeah, so the trailer that dropped today is for a Ryan Gosling movie that also has Aaron Taylor Johnson, Emily Blunt, Hannah Waddington, and Winston Duke. And in it, Ryan Gosling plays a stunt man who gets assigned to work on a movie that his ex-girlfriend is directing, and they had a huge falling out. And the major actor on the project, Aaron Taylor Johnson, somehow ends up going missing, and Hannah Waddington's character convinces Gosling that to win back the woman of his dreams, or the woman he loves, that he needs to find Aaron Taylor Johnson and bring him back to the set so the movie could finish, because then Emily Blunt's character would be happy because she got to finish her movie. And the trailer for it looks like it's a lot of fun. It looks humorous. There's a lot of humor. But the name of the movie is The Fall Guy. Now, I don't know how many of you remember in the 80s the TV series The Fall Guy with Lee Majors, Heather Thomas. Lee Majors played a stuntman named Colt Seavers, who was a bounty hunter. And I looked at this movie and I thought, is this a remake of The Fall Guy from TV, or is this they're just using that name? I was curious. So I looked it up. And they never say it in the trailer, which surprises me. Yes, you did mention Lee Majors yesterday. But yeah, Ryan Gosling is playing Colt Seaver. That's the stuntman he's playing. So this is basically a adaptation of The Fall Guy, but instead of him being a bounty hunter in his off time, he's a stuntman full time, and he's just going after this guy to win back his girl. Ed, I am with you 100%. There were two hot Heathers that were out at that, or popular at that time. Heather Thomas and Heather Locklear. Heather Thomas was on The Fall Guy. Heather Locklear was on TJ Hooker, and I much preferred Heather Thomas. So nothing wrong with Heather Locklear, but Heather Thomas just was much better looking in my opinion. So, but yeah, if you get a chance, check out the trailer for The Fall Guy. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. And if you get an action movie with a lot of comedy to it, you're going to get my attention. So, all right, we shall take our break. And when we come back, we will answer the question, is Marvel really in trouble? We'll be right back.
Join the party. Head over to our Linktree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.
Imagine being at a convention and going to an interview panel that's just for you. No bustling crowds, no hours-long lines, just you, the moderator, and your favorite comic book creators. Well, this is pretty much that. Miss Jen sits down every week with two comic book creators for a live stream interview about their latest work, and you can ask them whatever you want. It's Talking Shop, Mondays at 5 Eastern on The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales.
You know how when you go to Comic-Con, after Comic-Con, you go to the hotel bar, and there's a whole bunch of people playing music and dancing, and you've got Pikachu and Lara Croft Tomb Raider doing the cha-cha slide just down from Deadpool and Batman and Wonder Woman? That's every Saturday night over on the Experience Twitch channel. Join Taji Beats for the EXP Dance Party, exclusively on Twitch, twitch.tv/the_EXP.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. Stick around today. We've got a great lineup. We got What's in the Box. We have the comic book Beardies. They're looking at a bunch of new #1 books, including 3 different new Marvel books. First issue of Marvel books, including Spider-Boy, White Widow, and the Ultimate Universe. Also a new Supergirl book, so they're going to look at that. And then on SketchUp tonight, Mog and Mel welcome, I think his name is Grant Lankard. And they've got a couple other artists, Christy Shin, as well as somebody else doing art. So I want to stick around for all that because, it's a fun night. Plus, where else do you want to be? Okay, maybe at 6 p.m. or 9 p.m. Eastern, you want to watch Loki. I'm going to throw this out there. Let me see what you guys think. I was thinking that for next Thursday, maybe what we ought to do is instead of doing the show at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, we should bump it back to 9 p.m. because I don't think we have anything airing at 9 p.m. Eastern. I think we have something at 8 and we have something at 10. But if we bump it back to 9 for this one thing, and then we watch Loki season finale live when it drops and watch it all together. Now, I don't know if that'll work, but it's something I'm contemplating. Would you guys want to watch and react to 9 Eastern? It'd be 6 p.m. Pacific. I think that's an open slot if I was reading it right. It's very confusing with different time zones. But yeah. So what do you guys think? Do a live watch party for the season finale of Loki? Oh, I did not know that. Okay. All right, that won't work. Never mind. Okay, let's get into the discussion about Marvel. Now, yesterday I did a big breakdown of the Variety article, and it was a huge article. And the way it was written, it was really talking about things that insiders had told them, but it wasn't necessarily things that Marvel were going to do for sure. It was some of the things that Marvel has discussed doing, like the idea of maybe changing who the big bad is for the rest of the multiverse saga. They thought about what are their options if they lose Jonathan Majors. Do they recast him? Do they swap him out with another villain like Doctor Doom? Well, you go online and you're going to see probably a dozen videos of people going, Doctor Doom is coming. Doctor Doom replaces Kang. Doctor Doom this, Doctor Doom that. Now, I am sure that there was probably a meeting during this thing in September. Somebody probably raised his head and said, Doctor Doom was in Secret Wars. What if we swap him for Kang? And people kind of went, harumph, harumph, harumph. I didn't get a harumph out of that guy. That type of thing. Do I think Marvel would do that? No. I think they're on the verge of launching Fantastic Four as a franchise. They're not going to take their biggest bad. Well, okay, maybe Galactus is bigger, but they're not going to take one of the main villains from the Fantastic Four and oh, interesting. Okay. Maybe it is possible then. So anyway, they're not going to take one of the big bads from Fantastic Four and move them into the Avengers thing. And then what do you do with the Fantastic Four? You want the Fantastic Four to face Doctor Doom. And normally, if you put somebody up against the Avengers, eventually the Avengers win and that guy's done. We haven't seen Ultron come back. Loki changed. He's now a good guy. Thanos is gone. The Avengers are kind of, ending those things. You don't get those villains back. So I don't necessarily believe that they're going to do the thing with Doctor Doom. I think their absolute first choice is to stay with Jonathan Majors, is that he goes in, he clears his name. It turns out that he had done nothing wrong, and they continue on. I think that's their first choice. That's what they want to do. And I think if that doesn't happen, then there are some really good actors out there that they could then swap. And they have set up a multiverse where not everybody looks the exact same. Not every variant looks the same. And we know that because Sylvie is a Loki variant. Doesn't look the same. Look at the 3 different Peter Parkers. Alligator Loki, yes. Richard E. Grant as Loki. So there's nothing that says that it's going to be, it has to be Jonathan Majors, or they have to change to another villain. And Marvel has swapped out when it was necessary. May I remind you of Mark Ruffalo or Don Cheadle? So, what if they brought Terrence Howard in to be Kang? Kind of an ironic thing there. But yeah, there's a lot of good actors out there that they really needed to, and Jonathan Majors becomes unavailable. They could conceivably replace him and continue the story on. Hey, Valve. So I don't necessarily think that Doctor Doom is coming for Secret Wars. Now, could he be introduced in the Fantastic Four movie and then be part of Secret Wars? Yeah. Secret Wars is like the end of Phase 6, is the end of the multiverse saga. So yeah, they could, but I don't think he's going to kind of take over for what Kang is doing. And I think by the time we end Loki season 2, Kang is going to be set up big time to be the big bad. So maybe if they would have had a chance to make some changes, I kind of thought that they could have, the way they're doing it in Loki, how, they take the book back to 18, whatever it is, and give it to a young Victor Timely, that maybe he isn't the original Kang. Maybe he's a plant Kang, that's like, well, we'll give him the information. We'll lead him on this path to make him Kang, but he's not the actual Kang. So I don't know. I think there's ways out of it, but I don't necessarily think the answer is to swap in Doctor Doom. And that's definitely not confirmed, but there's a lot of websites out there that are acting like it is, or at least they do their headlines like they are. They'd need a bigger budget, according to him. According to Terrence Howard, yeah. Now, I want to talk about the parameters that people are talking about when they say Marvel's not doing well. What they talk about is the box office. And they say, well, Avengers Endgame made $1 billion worldwide. Spider-Man made $1 billion worldwide. Captain Marvel made $1 billion worldwide. These ones aren't doing it. But what they don't talk about is how the movie industry has changed drastically in the last few years. Now, let's first look at the movies that have appeared in the Marvel Multiverse saga so far. Phases 4 and 5 so far. We start off with Black Widow. And Black Widow made $379 million worldwide. Now, is that good? No, you probably want to be up near 800 for a Marvel movie. But also take a moment and think about when it came out. It made $379 million at a time where the theaters were mostly closed. It debuted on Disney Plus. It was a day and date release. The pandemic was going full force. Well, okay, we were a little past things were starting to open up, but still, people weren't racing back to the theaters. And that continued on for the rest of that year, for 2021. Shang-Chi, people loved Shang-Chi. It made $432 million worldwide. Eternals made $402 million worldwide. Now, all of those movies lacked China's box office, a lot of the worldwide box offices, because where we were able to start opening things up again in 2021, a lot of other countries didn't. And a lot of these movies make a big chunk of their money overseas. I'm going to give you some more examples of that in a minute, but, and then we get to Spider-Man No Way Home. Now that made a fortune. That made $1.9 billion, and good on it. But that's a Spider-Man movie, and Spider-Man is going to bring people in. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, it did $955 million. Again, this is an established character at that point. You had ties to the rest of the universe. It was a big thing. You had the special cameos. Love and Thunder. Thor was coming off a big movie. Ragnarok did great. Thor Love and Thunder did $760 million. That's not bad. And then Wakanda Forever, also coming off a huge hit, did $859 million. So, from Spider-Man No Way Home to Wakanda Forever, so from the movie at the very end of 2021 and all through 2022, they were doing an excess of $750 million with every movie. And like I said, No Way Home did $1.9 billion. So 2022 did well. Okay, so we've got 3 movies that did around $400 million during the pandemic and people just starting to get back, where a lot of the international box office isn't open. And then we have basically a very good year for 2021 or 2022. So now we get into 2023 and we get Quantumania. Now, Quantumania got rushed from a July date up to February. It had issues with the special effects because of it. One of the stars, now he hadn't got arrested yet, but they hyped the movie, but it's an Ant-Man movie. And that's the thing you got to remember. It's an Ant-Man movie. And it did $476 million, which for an Ant-Man movie is not bad. And then you had Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which did $845 million. So other than Quantumania probably doing about $300 million less than you want it to, the rest all seem to be doing pretty damn well. So what happened with Quantumania? Well, Quantumania, again, is an Ant-Man movie. It doesn't have the draw of a Spider-Man, a Doctor Strange, or a Thor, or even a Black Panther, or Guardians. Those were all very popular. Ant-Man's always been no pun intended, a smaller movie. It doesn't do as well. Now, when you look at the actual numbers for Quantumania, it did about the same domestically as Ant-Man and the Wasp. Ant-Man and the Wasp did like $216 million domestically, and Quantumania did like 208. It was maybe $8 million different domestically. And both of them beat Ant-Man, the original Ant-Man, which did about 180. So they were still 20 to 30 million above the original movie. Where the big hit came was at the international box office. Now, the majority of the money for those two movies came in from China first. Well, the international box, $105 million was brought in from the first movie, $121 million from the second movie. Quantumania made $39 million in China. Okay. China, again, is one of the biggest markets out there. And there was a couple of years that they didn't let anybody go to a Marvel movie. And then they finally started them coming in, but they were released much later than the rest of the world. I think Ant-Man finally got a day and date release, but, they're not as back in the theater. The entire international market is down. But see, that's the other thing that people aren't taking into consideration is the numbers that folks are comparing these movies to are from basically different eras now. 2009 to 2019, the box office was growing at an amazing rate. Okay. The average domestic box office for total for the year, all movies combined, started off at about 10 million in 2009, was at 11.6, not million, billion, is 11.6 billion in 2019. Okay. The high point being 2018, where they brought in $11.8 billion. So that's a lot of money. Now the pandemic hit, and the total domestic box office for 2020 was $2 billion. 2021 was $4 billion. 2022 is $7.3 billion. And this year it's at $7.6 billion. That means almost a third of your audience hasn't returned to the theaters. And that's not they haven't returned to Marvel movies. That is, they haven't returned to any movies. And we're also in a different era because during the pandemic, the idea of the day and date films started happening. People didn't go to the theaters, so they were watching movies at home. And a lot of them are choosing now to wait the 45 or 60 days and catch these movies on streaming services instead of going to the theater. Just a portion of the audience isn't coming back. That's a fundamental shift in the way people view their entertainment. And it was facilitated by the very same studios that are not making the money now. So that's why I think when they look at the movies right now and how much they're making, and they try to compare them to movies that came out between 2009 and 2019, it's not a fair comparison because your audience is smaller. There's just not as many people going to the theater. And there are some markets that are not carrying it. Just for a couple, for instances, Russia was good for a couple million. Ant-Man didn't, or Quantumania didn't open in Russia. They're not showing any American films right now. Ukraine was good for about $1 million worth of tickets. There's no Ukraine opening for Quantumania. They're in the middle of a war. So when you look at these numbers, you got to keep in mind that it's not necessarily comparing apples to apples when you look at something like the first Captain Marvel and, the Marvels now. They were done in different eras. Hello, Steve. All right, what does Ed say? I don't really care what the box office says. Some of my favorite movies were box office bombs. That being said, I was very disappointed in Black Widow movie, and Thor Love and Thunder was very bad. So I was buying into the Marvel is just doing bad thing, but I absolutely loved Spider-Man No Way Home. That was brilliant. The way they tied in all the variations of Spider-Man. Yeah. See, that's the thing is, I don't think the box office numbers are the problem. I think Marvel is still, in a sense, the juggernaut it was. It's just there's not as many dollars there to pick up because the industry has changed. There are movies now that I stay home and watch. I didn't go to the theater and see Guardians 3. I waited for it on streaming. You know, there are other movies like that too that I waited for on streaming. Now, I went and saw Quantumania in the theater because I wanted to. But, you know, there are... I saw the first two Poirot movies from Kenneth Branagh in the theater. I waited to see A Haunting in Venice on Hulu because it's different now. You know, getting to the theater is different, and you know the experience is different, but also the how quickly they get to streaming. You know, and I have a giant TV. I watch it, and it feels like I'm in the theater, but I don't have to worry about paying the exorbitant snack fees and stuff like that. And I don't have to worry about who's sitting next to me and what they might have. You know, have they got a cold? Have they got the flu? Have they got COVID? You know, New York Con just happened. You know how many people came back from New York Con in 2023 with COVID? The world has changed. It says, I'm too comfy in my lazy boy with my big screen TV. So with my back issues, my theater going days are probably over. Too convenient to stream and a lot less expensive. Yes. And so I think Ed is an example of what I'm talking about. JD says immunocompromised people will probably never be able to return to the theater. Yeah. It's just a very different world, and we can't keep comparing apples to oranges. Now, so the three things that were basically the Marvel problems when Variety put out their story, one was the box office. And I think I'm showing that it's not a fair comparison. That Marvel is still doing pretty well at the box office for all things considered and doing better than just about everybody else. Yes, the Barbie movie made a frickin' fortune. So did Oppenheimer and so did Top Gun. But that's one movie from Paramount, one movie from Warner Brothers, and I don't even remember who put out Oppenheimer. Marvel is doing around $400 million for their low movies and around $700-800 million for their better movies. That's pretty crazy when they're doing multiple movies a year. So, I mean, they've already brought in 120 million. What is it? Oh, no, much more than that. They've brought in 1.2 billion this year when you put Quantumania and Guardians 3 combined. Yeah, and I think you're right with it being universal for Oppenheimer. But yeah, 476 million for Quantumania, 845 million for Guardians 3. That means they've brought in 1.3 and change billion dollars this year off of two movies. I'd take that, wouldn't you? If you were a studio? Now, the other thing, the quality of these things. Thor, some of the TV series, stuff like that. You've got to remember that when all this happened, when this whole downturn happened, Bob Iger left Disney. Bob Chapek was promoted in his place, and Bob Chapek put out a mandate where he wanted either a Marvel movie in the theaters or a Marvel show on Disney Plus at all times. Hey, Thomas, good to see you. So he was going for quantity. And when you go for quantity, quality suffers. You know, Kevin Feige and his crew are amazing at the way they do movies. It's different than a lot of other places. They shoot the movie, they go into production, and they massage it and they reshoot and everything else they need to make it the best movie possible. But if you've got all these things in production, all these movies, all these TV shows, then you're going to stretch that group out. The special effects people are going to be stretched out. Kevin Feige is going to be stretched out. And your quality is going to dip, which it has. You know, Guardians 3 was phenomenal. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania had issues. And a lot of those issues were visual effects, and which I agree with. I think they could have done a better job on MODOK. But story-wise, you know, the biggest complaint you hear is that Ant-Man beat Kang. But if you read comics, Kang gets his ass kicked all the time and then comes back a little more deadly. And then he gets his ass kicked again and he comes back a little more deadly. You know, they're like, oh, he got beat by Ant-Man. It wasn't Ant-Man alone. It was Ant-Man, the original Wasp, and the Wasp, and a team of freedom fighters and an army of giant ants. That seems like a lot of people. So, let's see. JD says, one thought, it was an Ant-Man movie, but it also wasn't an Ant-Man movie. They took a hard left into a cosmic story, underverse, whatever, from what had been a fast-paced action heist film. True. They also did a very different movie. So they may have lost some viewers from that. Ed says, since he made the most hideous killing weapon of all time, is Oppenheimer a universal monster now? Oh, good question. Them, an excellent army. Yep. So what does it mean for Marvel to get back on track? I don't think financially they're in bad place. You know, I think they probably need to make the movies a little cheaper because the audience is smaller. Just compensate for that. Their special effects teams are rushed, so what they need to do is space out the projects more. Give them more time. Bob Chapek is gone. Bob Iger is back. Bob Iger has changed the mandate back to quality over quantity. So, do I think Marvel is in trouble? And that was the question we started to ask today. No, I don't. Because they still have a ton of great characters. They still have a ton of great creative people and actors. I think it's just a matter of slowing down a little bit, which they're doing, making sure what they put out is the best that they can put out. And they're doing that. They pulled the script for Blade and starting over. They got rid of the creative team on Daredevil and are reworking it to something they want. This is the right approach. But if you look at Loki, Loki is brilliant. It's a great series right now. So they can still do good stuff. You know, do they have an issue with Jonathan Majors? Yes. Will it get resolved one way or another? It will. So, no, I don't think Marvel is in trouble. I think that the only place you can show real problems is the ancillary sites that do a bunch of fake news or that do these kind of headlines and stuff to get you to click, because their numbers are down and they're worried. Their podcast numbers are down. Their article numbers are down. Their views are down. And they think it's because of Marvel. And I think it's because of the negativity. And if we get a few positive things about Marvel, like Loki, what if the Marvels opens up on the 10th and maybe it does only 75 to 80 million opening weekend, which most studios would kill for when it comes to a movie. And it does it, and then people start talking about the movie, and it starts going up and going up and going up. You know, it gets word of mouth. What if it is a good movie? You know, yeah, there was a report of a screening that got middling reviews. Now, I don't know if I trust that report, since the fact that, don't tell Beardy Rich that he is not a fan of Loki. Well, everybody has a right to be wrong. Because Marvel doesn't do test screenings. So the fact that there's a report saying they did one, and it even says, well, they normally don't do one, I don't necessarily buy that. I don't necessarily believe everything in the Variety article. So, wow, I am running long today. I thought we were still in the 40s, but turns out I had a lot to say about defending Marvel. So, but I think I'm at my end. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you have thoughts on it, we'll come back on Tuesday. You can share them then. You can put them in the comments of the YouTube feed. I'll see them. But yeah, I don't think Marvel's in that bad a shape. And I think they will turn it around. So I will see you all on Tuesday or Sunday night if you join me for Pop Go the Writers. And don't forget, tonight is the new episode of Loki. Episode 5 should be fun. So have a great weekend. Good night, Ed. Good night, everybody else. I missed all the names again, but Thomas and Steve and Valve and Triple B and JD. Good night, everybody.
Do you remember what it was like when you were a little kid and you got a letter in the mail? Now imagine that letter was filled with information about your favorite shows, pop culture questions, links to things you're going to want to see later, and even sneak peeks at upcoming programming here on The Experience. That's what the EXP mailing list is. Every week, we send you sneak peeks, information, and all of the relevant links for all of the shows you want to see. Sign up now on our website or scan the QR code that's on your screen right now.